What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Varsity Overland channel. Today we're taking a look at a new product that I recently purchased. Believe it or not, it's a new tent. However, it is not a rooftop tent. I got myself a Gazelle. All right, people. Well, I know what you're thinking. Why would you get a ground tent when you already had a rooftop tent? And not just any rooftop tent, I had an iCamper. So a lot of people are probably thinking this is a step backwards. Why would you go for a ground tent when you already had basically the staple of overlanding, a rooftop tent? Well, I was curious. And no, Gazelle definitely did not send me this product. I did not get a discount on this product. It is simply my curiosity that made me buy this tent. And I wanted to bring some hopefully useful information to you guys as well regarding ground tent and ground tent overlanding. So the Gazelle is a very, very well-known brand of overland style tenting. And I've seen quite a few people use this type of tent or this brand of tent. The first person I ever saw to use it was a YouTuber by the name of Edward Shin. You've probably heard of him. He was like one of the original influencers who got me interested in this expensive hobby of ours. And then I've also recently seen Overland Bound has featured not this tent, but a very similar version of this Gazelle tent on their channel as well. So I was figuring, you know what, I'm going to change things up for a couple months. I'm going to see what this ground tent life is really like. And the biggest reason why is really just because I've gotten a couple comments on my Instagram, a couple messages I should say, about people who want to get into overlanding, people who want to get into the whole car camping experience, but they don't have the means or the money to really get the rooftop tent. And I feel like rooftop tents are kind of like permanently associated with overlanding, to the point where if someone can't get themselves a rooftop tent, then they don't even bother. They don't really like bother going out to explore because they don't want to look like they're lesser than, I guess you could say, which is a terrible way to think about it. Overlanding has been linked to rooftop tents so incredibly that it just kind of becomes, you know, the end-all be-all of the experience. And I don't want that to be the case. I don't want people to feel that way. So what I'm gonna do over the next few months, and that includes the end of fall, that includes the winter, that includes early spring, next few months, I'm gonna give this tent a shot. I'm gonna see how convenient it is. I'm gonna see what it's like in the cold. I wanna see, you know, how it stacks up in the weather, in the sun, in the precipitation. And I just want to kind of prove, like, yep, ground tent overlanding, it's a thing. It's totally possible. You do not need to, you know, dive into a rooftop tent. All right, so part of the convenience of the Gazelle tent that it advertises is that it can set up in 90 seconds. And I know when you go online, you can find plenty of the videos from people who have done it probably a dozen times, 24 times. And they're really good at it, so they can set it up in definitely 90 seconds, probably less than 90 seconds. But what I'd like to show you is, what does a newbie look like when they're setting it up? I've never used it. It's never gone beyond the point of being packaged right out of the box. So, gonna go old school. I got a stopwatch. I'm gonna start it. I'll back up, start to open it up, try to set it up myself. I'm going based off of memory. I have watched a few videos. I did look at the instructions, but I'm going to go based off of memory for the sake of the video and try to be as honest as I possibly can. When I come back, I'm going to click the stopwatch so that you guys know how long it can actually take. You know, if you are someone who just bought one or you're thinking about buying one, how long is it going to take for you to do it the first few times before you really get used to it? And I'm going to use a stopwatch not because like I'm trying to run, I'm trying to go fast. I'm just going to do it naturally, but the stopwatch is really just going to come into play if I need to speed up the video, because I have no idea how long this is actually going to take. And if it's longer than I anticipate, and I don't want you guys just sitting there for 15 minutes just watching me fumble around with this thing, I'll speed up the video. And then once I'm done, I'll slow it down, come back, and we'll check the actual time. So, here we go. All right, 5 minutes. Based on my camera, I can't tell if this is going to be backwards because I have it flipped over, so I can actually see what I'm doing. But 5 minutes, 23 seconds. So it's not too bad. I'll have to watch this back myself. I have no idea whether I'm going to speed it up or not. I might maybe turn it on like times 1.5 or something like that speed. But you might have noticed that I had a little bit of a struggle. Got a helicopter flying over right now. I hope it doesn't interfere with my audio, but I had a little bit of a struggle popping out one of the walls. Let's just wait for this helicopter. So yeah, I had a little bit of a struggle popping out one of the walls. And you probably noticed the tent rocking back and forth a little bit while I was trying to move around it. That's really just because the ground that I have it setting on right now is not level. Anyway, so that's not the tent, that's the ground that it's laying on. That's why it was kind of rocking back and forth. The walls are really sturdy. When I was trying to pop them out, I popped out the first one, I popped out the second one. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really cool. I can understand why this mechanism or this gimmick for Gazelle works well. I can see why, because it is convenient. It is really easy. But once I did the third one and tried to go for the fourth one, I think my initial impression is that they get harder to pop out. They get harder to pull on the more walls that are up. So that fourth one for me was a struggle. I think maybe my first thought is if I have the stakes in the ground, or at least one stake in the ground on like the far corner, when I'm trying to pull the last wall, it'll have some tension. It'll leave some tension on the other side and I'll be able to pull on it. So I'll have to experiment with that in the future. Getting the Rainfly on, I expected to be more of a chore than it actually was. It was pretty simple. I just threw it up and over the top. If you leave the roof pulled down and you don't pop that up first, throw the rain fly on, you pop in the 4 corners, and then you push it up. Really, really easy. So at the moment, I'm pretty satisfied, and I'll back up in a second so you can see how big this thing really is. But the convenience factor, I can tell for a ground tent is definitely there, especially for a tent that you might use for overlanding when you're trying to like roll into camp maybe late at night. You spent all day searching for a good spot, or you roll into camp and it's raining or it's snowing. Convenience, the time to set up, for a novice who didn't know what he was doing, took me 5 minutes. So I'll back up in a second, because now we can talk a little bit about the comfort. And along with comfort is the living space, right? What does it look like? So let me back up so you can see what this thing actually looks like in comparison to me. I am 5'8". Sad face. I wish I was taller, but 5'8". See what I look like in comparison. So right off the bat, what I'm noticing is the door. Okay, the doorway is kind of like tucked into the corner of the actual tent. You've got one on this side, and way over here on the back, you've got another one. Okay, so I mean, it just depends what side you want to go into. They only have one on the back, one on the front, and the sides have the windows. All right, so what I'm noticing about the door is it has kind of like this flap that hangs over the bottom half of the zipper, and then an opposite flap going the other way on the top half of the zipper. Definitely understand the function of that, and I understand why it would be there. The only thing that I have had some trouble with related to this is right here at the transition. Already a few times I've had the zipper get caught in the fabric. So until you get used to it, I would definitely go slow opening up the zipper. And just kind of like try and tuck it away as you go. It goes all the way up, and you have this first layer that you can pull away. And I see here that there are strings kind of like hanging off the tent on both sides. Okay, so like most tents, you can roll up the door, tuck it in there, and then tie it together. All right, so first door is out of the way. Second one has another set of zippers here, and there are no flaps that hang over it other than the ones on the top. Oops, the ones on the top. The one on the bottom was actually part of the door. So open this one, same issue. You got to try to get around that flap all the way up, and then there you go. So it's not exactly like a full-size door. And my initial impression was like, oh, that's weird, kind of inconvenient. I liked it back in the day when I used to have a ground tent. I liked it when like the whole front of the tent would open up as the door. But now that I'm thinking about it, it makes a lot of sense. Because if you notice, the door doesn't go all the way to the ground. It stops short, I want to say 9 inches, maybe a little bit more than that. So this way, if anything happens, you get any sort of flooding, you get some snow, whatever it is, it's not going to crawl its way, move its way into the tent, because there's a zipper there and a door there. I also imagine it kind of helps with the sturdiness. They couldn't make it if they wanted to use this wall pop-out method of construction. They wouldn't be able to make it a whole door because this gets in the way. So whether they did it on purpose or they had to do it because of the mechanics of the tent, either way, I kind of think it makes sense. I wonder if I'm going to end up tripping over it at night when it's pitch black and all I have is my headlamp, because you kind of have to get your leg up and over to go inside. But that remains to be seen. We'll figure that out when the time comes. So inside is massive, especially compared to the dimensions you'd get in a rooftop tent. So moving on to the comfort aspect of the Gazelle tent, or just a ground overlanding tent in general, you're definitely going to have a lot more space. I'm going to put the measurements or the dimensions up on the screen that Gazelle has on their website, but it's pretty huge in here. So stepping in, I like that the floor is made of this like really durable rubberized material. You can tell like this is the stuff that's waterproof. Nothing's going to come in here. There is a transition right here. Got a couple little pull tabs for Velcro. Wow, that's in there. Okay, yeah, I had to cut away for a second so I could use both hands because this is some strong Velcro. But you can see right through to the other side. So why is it like that? Well, if you need to take the floor off and clean it, replace it, whatever, you can do that. The Velcro goes all the way around the entire tent. I actually have seen a few people that they start with their gazelle tent, they start with their ground tent for overlanding, and eventually they move to a rooftop tent, but they still want the gazelle tent as like a sheltered space to bring with them in case there's precipitation. And so what they do is they'll remove the whole flooring and then they'll just take the rest of the tent, sort of as like an annex that they can use if the time calls for it. So that could be a possibility. Because I still have my rooftop tent and I still plan to use that in the future. So maybe that's a route I'll go, removing the floor and all that. So anyway, it is big in here. All right. So let me flip the camera around. And you can see I am completely standing up. Okay. I'm standing in the center and still have a lot of space. It's always hard to tell. Camera angles don't really do justice when you're trying to like depict how large something is or how, you know, far away something is. But I'm 5'8", and I'd like to say, you know, I got 2 hand lengths just about. So I've got plenty of headspace. And even if I step to the side, I don't start touching it until I'm literally at the edge. I still got maybe one more step. Oh, now I'm pushing the tent down if I step that far. So this is probably about as far as I'd want to walk on the edge anyway. And my head is just barely touching the roof. So there's a lot of space in here. And as far as, you know, comfort, livability of a gazelle tent or a ground overlanding tent, I could definitely see the appeal. I mean, I could bring in my camp chairs if I wanted to and sit down. My wife and I have a iCamper SkyCamp 2.0 rooftop tent, and the footprint on the inside, like the living space of the inside, is pretty big for a rooftop tent, because it has that multifunctional, like that combined clamshell slash soft shell fold out mechanism. So the you know, the space gets very large. There's enough space in there for a king size mattress and then some, you know. So we fit the 2 of us, and in the summer of 2021 we fit the 2 of us and 2 dogs up there, and we were not crammed at all. Okay, it was very comfortable. Comparing that though to this, seems very small. The living space in here is huge. So I mean, there's enough space for definitely for a king size mattress on the floor, and then, you know, the dog could get up and roam if she wanted to in here. So I definitely feel like the comfort, the living space, the ability to stand up. If you have a rooftop tent, you know what it's like trying to change your clothing while inside the rooftop tent. Maybe because it's snowing or raining outside. Or maybe you're at like a convention, you know, an expo, and there's another truck or another car parked 5 feet away from yours, and you don't want to get out of the tent to change. So you know the struggle. Changing your clothing, like getting ready inside of a rooftop tent, is challenging. Getting ready inside this kind of tent, however, I feel like would be way easier, simply just because you can stand up. You could even designate space on the floor in the front of the tent for like dirty items. You know, like I could step into the tent right here. I could step into the tent, lay down a mat if I wanted to, and say, okay, this is where we're going to keep all of our dirty boots. This is where we're going to keep the towel for the dog. This is where we're going to keep everything basically that we don't want to carry into the tent because it's going to get everything dirty. So I'm actually kind of excited about that. I kind of feel like it can help, the space can help keep the inside of the tent clean, and just standing up is going to be really helpful, especially in the morning. All you want to do is get out of bed and stretch your legs. And if you're in a rooftop tent, you can't do that until you crawl down the ladder. And actually, speaking of crawling down the rooftop tent ladder, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I need to go to the bathroom, I don't have to take the risk that I'm going to fall off the ladder. I can just step right out of the tent. So, positive. Feeling pretty positive.